This video will demonstrate the use of the fabrication module in ActionFlow. And to do that, I want to consider a job with three areas. That is, let's assume we're dealing with a job that has a kitchen in Baltic Brown, a bathroom in Caledonia, and a second bathroom in Ubatuba. Now, these blue boxes are steps that happen at the job level. That is, in this case, you'd probably quote all of these in one quote, and then you template them all on the same day, skip the fabricate, but then you would probably install these all on one day and invoice them. So except for the fabricate piece, these actions up here, we might say, happen at the job level. Now the actions, the green boxes represent actions that happen in the shop. So this is the fabrication of the tops. And these would essentially happen for each area. So we might say these happen at the area level. These actions happen in the shop, where these actions up here tend to happen in the office. Now the normal process automation in ActionFlow generally applies to the job level, where the fabrication module allows you to apply the power of process automation to the shop in a similar way that you do for the office. So let me show you how that works with an actual example in ActionFlow. So here we have the customer, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's the primary home is the job, and we have three areas, a kitchen and two bathrooms. Now at this point I've set it up so we're ready. We've just completed, we're ready to process the template. So if we look over here on the scheduler, we see the 311 is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So we have a template scheduled for that was just happened on a Tuesday, and then the install is scheduled on a Friday. Now one other job, we have an install scheduled for Mr. and Mrs. Jones on a Thursday as well, and that will come in a little later. But we're going to process this template for Mr. and Mrs. Smith and then proceed forward from there. So I'm going to click an OK to process that. We'll send a final estimate. We'll confirm any ordering of stone that needs to happen. And then we'll receive our final estimate. And then I'll refresh this. And we'll see that we're ready for confirmed fab. Now you may, in your configuration, may call it a different name for this action, but this is where somebody in the shop is saying, yes, this these areas are ready to be fabricated. So when I click confirm fab, notice no additional actions are added, and you might think that nothing happened. But if I come over here to this Fabrication tab, notice this is showing job 311, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And then these are the three actions that we have for this job. So I say three actions, three areas, area 449, 450, and 451. And each of these areas have their own set of actions. So notice as I click down here that the actions are changing down below. And I previously added a comment on this first area just to show you that, that these are different sets of actions for each of these areas. Now, so this is the screen then where you would you can see any slabs that are available for each area. If they're, and this will show you the tops. Now for this demo, I just added one top for each area, but you might have multiple tops showing there. Now, the next step is to come over here to the Fab Scheduler. And if I refresh this, we see those three jobs, those three saw actions that we added are showing up right here on Tuesday. So these are area 450, 449, 450, and 451. And when you hover it over, you can see the template and install actions that might be scheduled. Over here we have this was Mrs. Jones that we're installing on Friday, so we have a saw action there as well. Now, these saw actions are assigned to the saw user, and you could, if you wanted to, come over here and see the actions. Well, it's not Monday yet. I'm doing this demo on a Sunday, so if I set that to 2 future days, these are the 4 actions that are there for the saw. So you could use have a person named Saw, or you could call it Jim if he's the guy who runs your saw, and use your DoNow list. However, I think it makes more sense, or as much sense, that he wouldn't even have to use his DoNow list, and you might just have this screen or the week view for a shop user to see what needs to be done. Now, the other thing that's important here, notice this is a Baltic brown and a Baltic brown. So in this case, you are able to search the scheduler and see just Baltic brown jobs. So if I were to select Baltic brown here, it refreshes, and if I want to, I can even just look at the saw, and I can see that I'm fabricating a Baltic brown on Tuesday and a Baltic brown on Wednesday. In this case, I might say, why don't I just go ahead and move the Baltic brown that I was going to do on Tuesday and fabricate it on Monday at the same time. Then I may be able to save a slab, or at least save time by doing 2 areas at the same time. So then if I go back to the view all the colors, I've been able to move one piece from this area or job 311 over to Monday and create a more efficient fabrication schedule in that way. Now, the other thing you're able to do is to complete these actions right from the scheduler. So if I have fabricated this job, I can right click here and complete it, and when I do that, it will drop off the schedule. And depending on how you configure the actions, you can also complete it with a problem and then say you know, no slabs, or whatever the problem that kept you from completing that action. And so in that way they both go away. Now what's more, if you choose to, if it's by default, as you complete them, they will drop off the scheduler. But if you want to, you can show completed. Oh, this was an earlier one from when I was testing it. But you can see that the actions that were completed okay show as green, and the ones that were completed as problems show as pink. So in that way, oh, one more thing. So for each of these, there is a Fab Schedule report. So I can click this, should default to the current day, and just show you a list of all the items that are to be fabricated on a certain day. So here's the saw actions that are due to be fabricated. And if you had edge and finish actions, they wouldn't show up on this same report. One more thing I want to point out is that the automated adding of new actions actually works in the Fab schedule as well. So for example, if I click here and complete this, and I've got it set up to automatically add the edge action, it will do that. Now, a little bit of the problem in this demo is that I'm doing it on a Sunday. So if I go back here, notice that the edge is added for Sunday, and I'm doing this at 4:23 p.m. And on the earlier one, we can see that the edge was added at that time as well. So in real life, if you were doing this on the Tuesday when it was actually scheduled, then it will be added at the time you complete the action, so that if I do a refresh here, yeah, we see that the edge was added. So as you're completing each of these, it's going to automatically add the next one to the to the schedule. So one thing you could do, if you had this screen up in the shop, as an action got completed, you would complete it and it would automatically show the next action that has to happen for that area.